Hello, and welcome to the Comedian's Paradise. This is a podcast where we speak to the most gorgeous, stunning, and powerful comedians and clowns from across the world. These are people who have fascinating stories to tell, and they are absolutely, we got some, they will astound you with their knowledge and experiences. Now, today's guests are a clown duo who've been going over 20 years. They're called the Slappy and the Monday, no, Slappy Monday. Slappy Monday. I tried to have a rhyme to it. I ruined it. But it's Slappy and Monday. You're going to absolutely love them. Please welcome Tiffany Riley and Dick Monday.
Thank you for having us. It's a pleasure to be here.
Absolutely.
On this beautiful day. Yeah, talking about clowning. We like to talk about clowning. We do
talk
a lot
about
of
it a lot, all the time, pretty much.
That's kind of what we do.
Do you get any cheeky puns when you may say that and they say, don't clown around or stuff like that? And you're like, no, leave the dad jokes to us.
Well, I think it does happen often. And in general, people are trying to make a connection with you. And so I think maybe when we were younger and less sure of ourselves, that would be like frustrating. Will you stop saying that to me? But now it's a connecting point, and I think we have more grace for people that are saying that. They just want to connect with us, and that's what we're all about, is connecting with people. So it's changed through the years, the reception of that kind of phrase, I would say.
Well, hopefully I reach that point, because I myself, when people ask me if I do comedy, they always ask the same questions and they think they're asking something new, and you're always saying the same thing again and again. So when I become a Dwayne the Rock Johnson, I will handle it better.
Yeah, I think there's a lot of grace that you have to have when you're a clown, because we have to understand that people really don't get the serious nature, the hard work, the persistence, the consistent work on recreating your act, making it better every time you do it, that this isn't just a frivolous kind of romp on stage for an hour or 20 minutes or 3 minutes, whatever the time is, that you actually have honed this material sometimes for a good part of your career. You know, I remember first reading about Grok, the famous theatrical clown, who spent his entire career honing his theater show, and every moment had been changed and honed through the years to make it perfect. And watching, a technician like Grok in the tapes, it's just not what any normal audience member would really think that a clown prepares to the amount that they do.
It's when you're like developing material and you're getting all perfect, like with comedians, they open mics and they go to semi-pro gigs and they hone it again and again. With how do clowns get the stage performance to go on the smaller stages before they go on the big stage and make it what it is? How do you guys do that? Would you go on stand-up shows as well and pretend not to be clowns and try and hide it a bit? Because I know some clowns in the UK do that.
Yeah, I think when I lived in Los Angeles, I appeared on a lot of stand-up stages and did a lot of verbal comedy, but the basis of my engagement and connection to the audience was through a clown lens. Really listening and reacting and changing pace according to the audience. But I remember when I would do physical comedy in a stand-up club, many times I would do very well because the audience was used to talking heads. And all of a sudden I was a visual comic that would fill the space with a little different kind of material. The other stand-ups would often say, oh, that's not pure stand-up. And I go, well, that's valid. It's comedy though. And the audience really enjoyed it. And this is a comedy club, not a stand-up club. So thank you for welcoming me into your pure stand-up world so that I could do a little physical comedy.
And in a way, I've spoken to a lot of clowns and it makes it easier. Like the more that as a clown, as you're different and you go into a stand-up shows, the better you're going to do on stage because you're so different to everyone else. And they're like, oh, something a bit different. It's like, I like a Chinese takeaway. I like Italian food, but if I'm having it every day of the week, I get bored.
Right.
Yeah.
Right. Yeah.
I would say that the other place, I mean, I went to acting school, so I came from the acting lens of this work and started by doing plays and things that had there's a fool. A lot of Shakespeare's plays have clown characters. And so approaching it from that way. And I think also, I mean, there was one thing in particular that brought the two things together. And it was the show that we did like many, many years ago called Clowning the Bard. And it was a group of clowns, and we was in the New York Fringe Festival, and we boiled down each of Shakespeare's play to like a 3 to 5 minute story told through clowning. So it was a nonverbal show, and we split up the play. So for me, it was a great way to be in front of an audience with a backdrop of Shakespeare, but the feeling of clowning. And there was like, it was just a great melding of those two things. And I think for me, after that, I went, wow, okay, plays are great, but the clowning thing is the thing it really makes me soar. And then I sort of took a hard left after that to just clowning.
Let me give some historical reference, because Tiffany hadn't been clowning as long as I had, and we were a partnership, a relationship. And when we came back to New York, from the West Coast and settled in to do clown theater here in New York City, I think that was the first opportunity that you had, Tiffany, to really utilize your stage experience. You were newer to the clown world. I think it was the perfect show for you to really get your clown chops, because you had confidence from knowing your theatrical work. And here it was a clown world and a great entrance. And I think that was the first time that your reviews, they noticed you as a clown, and you'd been an actress your career. So that was, I think, a really marvelous turning point for your career as a clown.
Well, no, interesting. What were your lives like before you became like performers? Because or before you became like clowns, because you hear all the time like Hollywood films, like people work in bars or they work in coffee shops. I myself, as a comedian, don't tell my parents, don't tell my mum or Asian relatives this because they want me to be a doctor, but I work as a barista. So I hope they're not listening in. Don't tell them.
You got it. Your secret's safe with us in the internet world.
But what was your lives like before you started becoming big as professional performers, and how did that in a way help you guys as performers?
Well, I started, my parents were dancers and choreographers, and they had a dance studio when I was growing up. So I started modeling and doing musical theater and theater when I was very young. And so I did that my whole life growing up, performing as a dancer and an actor and a singer, so for me, the departure to clown was sort of shocking to my mother in particular, because she had 4 boys and then she had me, and she dressed me up like beautifully every single day. And she would always tell the story, well, I made this beautiful daughter and then she turned out to be a clown. And she would say it in the most loving way, but there was this little bit of a thing like, oh, I see. She's wishing I would have stayed pretty, I guess. But it worked. It was very supportive. I had a lot of, like he was saying, I had a lot of performance time, but there's a huge difference between being an actor and a dancer and a singer in a fourth wall production and being a clown, where you are looking into the eyes of the audience and seeing what they're giving back to you. That was a huge transition, but I think certainly my experience growing up helped me to make that transition.
Nice. Yeah, I always blame my clowning on the fact that I grew up in Nebraska, which is a very conservative farming state. And so there were really nothing around me except interesting people, because there were no natural resources. We just, it's not a very pretty state. If you like cows and corn, you'll be in heaven. So I think we relied on storytelling, and my grandfather, I listening to him tell wild stories of being in Nebraska, pheasant hunting. I think the communication and engagement were so important to me as a kid, because it was cold and kind of a difficult place to grow up. The weather was always a blizzard, or it's 120 degrees. It was extremes. But so I became a springboard diver. My brother was a swimmer. So when I was 8 years old, I started spending about 3 hours a day on a diving board. So I did that from the time I was 8 until I was 12 years old. So for those 4 years, I learned to focus and concentrate. I learned to rehearse my dives in the night before a big meet. I would go through in my brain, and I think it really helped me realize that I was really performing and learning a lot of the strategies of making sure that you can do your best work when you're in front of an audience. And so many little kids just, couldn't find that concentration. I was lucky I had an older brother, and he would help me, and he was kind of my coach along with my real coach. But so I prepared. I was in the Olympic trials when I was 13 years old, and didn't do well because I had lost my coaching staff the year before. We moved to another city. So that's what really got the clowning going, because I left a small town into a suburb of Washington, D.C. when I was in 8th grade. And talk about a difference in environment. So I felt like I was in survival mode. And so I taught myself to juggle, because I had a lot of free time by myself before I had friends. And then I met another friend who was kind of quirky like me, and we learned to juggle together. And then we bought unicycles, and we unicycled around the neighborhood. And so I fell in love with the variety arts. And I used to, my parents would think I'd go to bed and I'd turn the lights off, but then I would turn on my little TV set and watch the Tonight Show, because there was always a variety artist, like Jonathan Winters would be on. And Jonathan Winters, I think I have to say, was the key to me realizing that all the craziness, absurdity could be honed into comedy. It's a great way to express all of your frustrations and your anxieties could come through this art form. I watched Jonathan Winters and I loved him. And Jerry Van Dyke would do pantomimes, little silent bits. And, so Carl Valentine, the great comedy magician. And there were these, still on late night TV, there were a little bit of remnants of the variety past that used to be everywhere, with the Ed Sullivan Show and vaudeville and Sid Caesar, your Show of Shows, all of this old classic stuff is really what honed my beginning.
Is it? There's not as much of that anymore on the Tonight Show, though, is there? This is a shame, isn't it?
Yeah.
Yeah. I think, the Blue Man Group came through a while ago and brought a different, look to it. I was on Jay Leno's show twice. I know he tried to utilize physical comedians, but he really was such a stand-up pro. He was such part of that Comedy Store group with Letterman and, the guys that really made stand-up what it is in the country, and then became the new wave of comedy in America. Yeah, I think it has disappeared. I think now we go back to all your reality shows, Dancing with the Stars and
AGT.
the AGT, so we've got to have a contest in order to do variety entertainment. So it's different.
Are things changing though? Because I mean, like with Vigo Venn doing so well in Britain's Got Talent, could there in maybe the next 10, 20 years see more variety acts like him when in the clown world actually start changing comedy again, and people being, oh, I want to be like Vigo Venn. I don't want to be producer Neil talking about life. I want to be the idiot on stage. Do you think in 10 or 20 years with someone like that going on there could be a slight change? Because comedy's now getting they're getting a bit more samey, so people maybe want a bit of that.
Maybe. We just saw him actually in a show in New York a month or so ago. Yeah, he was great. I mean, I think it would be great. I think that you know, I think the reality show thing is it's still playing itself out, but what is that next thing? What is the next thing that people will be interested in? I mean, there's just so much content, at least, you know, you can go anywhere for content and there's all kinds of it. So it's hard to, I think it's harder to make a dent. It's hard to make an impression.
But it's interesting as you bring up the cyclical notion of how things come and go as far as what's popular, what's in the hour gore. I think we had a
We're so French just now.
Oh,
every
c'est
now
bien.
and then. Yeah, he's the smart one, but we had this new vaudeville movement in the United States. I would say in the 70s. I went to clown college, Ringling Brothers Clown College in 1974. And that was the same year Philippe Petit walked the trade towers on the high wire. It was a very interesting year, I think. So New York and New England had kind of a new vaudeville movement for a while. Avner the Eccentric was on Broadway. The Flying Karamazov brothers juggling group were at Lincoln Center with doing their production of Comedy Bears with Avner. So there was a lot of variety in that era that was really making it onto the bigger stages. I think it opened a lot of doors and interests for clowning in America, which I think did very well. With the Ringling Brothers Clown College, we were graduating about 35 students a year. The circus was employing maybe a third, maybe a half of those graduates on the Ringling Brothers touring units. But the rest of those clown-educated people went on to theme parks or went to New York and went into commercial acting and did their own theater shows. Bill Irwin, he went back to San Francisco, did the Pickle Family Circus with Larry Pisoni and Jeff Hoyle. So there was a lot of movement in that era. And then we came about the Stephen King era when It came out, and all of a sudden we had a new factor, and that was, oh, let's be afraid of clowns. Let's be afraid of them. So that became, right in the forefront of everybody's work. No matter where you're working, you had to deal with that issue, whether it was real or not. And now we went into an era where housewives began using silk aerial artistry to build their core muscles. So we had a circus art that used to be just for circus artists became an exercise routine. And the reason I bring that up is because I feel that the clown world is now kind of experiencing a similar crossover, using clowning as self-exploration, a license to do things that normal stand-ups wouldn't do. I think there's some good coming out of it. I think there's some bad coming out of it. I think we're heading in a direction where we're coddling a lot of clown performers because the audience is usually other clown performers. So it becomes very incestuous. And we're reinforcing clowning that isn't that good with applause and laughter because it's from the same people that are trying to do the same thing. Half of me says, what a beautiful, accepting way to go. But the other half of me says, when are you going to learn the reality that it's hard to be funny?
Yeah, that's an interesting thing. What makes you say that there's cuddling? And you don't need to answer if you don't. But what example you've seen? I mean, I think there might be from what I've seen from the Goliath side, but I mean, what from your side? What would you say you've seen in terms of the cuddling?
Some clown groups are making it very clear. We're here to support our fellow clowns. And they really want that support system. Clowns need a support system. However, if it's not an audience, we were talking about New York audience versus Kalamazoo. Kalamazoo, they're just there to have fun. New York, they're going to judge. Well, if you get an audience is there to support you, as opposed to an audience just waiting to have fun, if they don't see the goods, they're not going to laugh, a normal audience. If you're a clown student watching what's going on, you're going to see oh, I see a good idea there, and you're going to support it, even if it's not a honed piece of material. It's an artificial audience. You're getting artificial responses. And my other question is, do you really want to be a clown? Or do you want to use this experience to be a life experience, or a way to become a better actor? Or, how many are you really thinking about looking at a way to make a living, pay your rent, pay your insurance as a clown? Really? How many that are pursuing this art form? I don't know that answer.
Well, I think it's a double-edged sword, because on the one hand, it's amazing and wonderful that there are so many people that are studying clown or clowning, depending on which school of thought you call it, clown or clowning. There's so many people studying it. I think it started coming out of being an actor in actor training. Eventually it became apparent that, hey, if you're training to be an actor, one really important class you should take is clown, because it will help you in ways that some of the other classes won't. So then I think it's great in that regard. Like, a lot of people have a greater awareness of clown, but then on the flip side of that is, as far as moving the art form forward on a bigger scale in front of bigger audiences, it gets tricky, because well, first of all, the number of places that you can take that has changed, and secondly, the number of people that really are pursuing it as a life choice is also changed. So I think we're in a really possibly great transitional fog soup moment for this art form. See where it goes.
Go anyway. So, but yeah, you mentioned...
But it kind of leads us back to your original question, which was, where can you go to develop and hone your craft? Where are the smaller stages before you get to the big time? And so that's the good part of now being clown stages around Manhattan and Brooklyn and the Bronx, that you can go and do your 5 minutes with a group of other people trying to pursue similar physical comedy goals. And so even though you may not find an audience that's real, it's other clowns mostly and their friends, you're still getting it out there and you're still developing. So the question becomes, what is the next step? If you're serious about pursuing clowning, I really think I always judge someone as a success if they can pay their rent doing their art. That's more than most people ever make it to. And so what is where are you going to start seeking compensation for the work you're doing as a clown? And so you have to look at opening a lot of doors and taking some risks, like, oh, there's a job opportunity at the fair in the middle of Oklahoma in September when the average temperature is 110, and you can stroll around for 3 hours in the heat and make $300 a day. Are you willing to pick up your life and go to Oklahoma for 3 hours a day to start making a living at this business? Because that's what it's going to take to make that bridge.
No, you mentioned a very interesting thing there, and I really find it very interesting, because there's a thought that I've had, especially from like being a comedian and also studying at Gaudier. I found that there's some people that call themselves clowns. I'm not sure if they are clowns. Now, what would you say is the difference, obviously, from the ones that are getting paid and it's full-time thing, but when you see a performer that says they're a clown, that it's just maybe controversial, but how can you tell the difference between someone who is actually a clown, that says they're a clown, and someone that claims to be a clown that isn't really a clown?
Well, you're going to give that to me.
No, both of you. Both of you.
Yeah.
I'd like to hear your take on that.
I mean, again, the way that I think of it, at least recently, is if what you're doing on stage as a clown is something that should be in a classroom instead of in front of an audience, I don't think you're there yet as a clown. I also think a person who's a clown is always thinking with clown logic. They're always thinking of themselves. Everything they're looking at is from the clown perspective, and I don't see that sometimes. And I don't know. I guess that is controversial, because I I don't know. I would have to dig into something specific, but like, I think someone that thinks they're a clown might just be a performance artist.
Ah.
And maybe that is a good way to describe it, because to me, a clown inspires and engages an audience, and hopefully they laugh. I mean, if you don't get any laughs as a clown, I'm not sure any laughs. I think you need some. There needs to be some comedy involved. And if you aren't getting that, then maybe you should be a performance artist. And there's nothing wrong with that. That's also great. But I think that's my controversial answer. Dick, I'm sure you have something even more.
Well, I did a physical theater festival this year, and we performed there, and it was the first year of a festival. But there was one clown show that I watched, and visually it was exciting. There was momentum. There wasn't laughter. There was kind of story, but I didn't understand what was going on. And I find this to be often the case, that I can't follow the story. And I'm not a genius, but I like to know what's going on. And that's why I love clowning, because of the simplicity. It should hit on the major beats of humanity that we share. When I see a story I can't understand, no matter how good the performance is, it's hard for me to enjoy it. And so this particular performer that I saw them do a half-hour piece. And so this person came to our show the next night, and afterwards we were talking, and they said, "Did you read the description of my show?" And I said, "Yes, I did."
No.
And they went, "Well, thank goodness, because then you knew what was going on." And right then I said, if you're depending on someone to read, that's a different agreement than most performers have with their audience. Most performers will establish what the audience needs to know to understand the story and incorporate everything they need to know in the actual performance. And that's why I love clowning, because it's totally self-produced. You make your own props, your costumes, you write your material, and you tell your story. And hopefully they understand it. So that's the start. If you don't understand the story, I think it's tough to get laughs. So when I'm teaching or directing, that's where I go first. Once I know what the story is, then we can figure out how to tell that story with the punctuation marks that could get laughs. If you're not trying to get laughs, as some clowns will say, I wasn't going for laughs. I was going to be more message oriented or this or that. It's very courageous, but it's a different kind of clowning than I'm familiar with.
What you said there just reminds that's exactly like stand-up. What you said there, is exactly what a lot of stand-ups do. Same sort of thing. You look for you look for the beats and the punctuation marks to describe the story, and they got to know where you're at or who you are.
Yep.
Yeah. One of the first full-length clown shows I ever saw was Avner. And right at the beginning says the show's going to begin in 5 minutes. The show never begins. I went on that journey because I didn't know him and I was really new to clowning. And I'm like, when is the show going to start? It took me a while to figure out that was the show. But then when it went, oh my gosh. Okay. And then it was just such a brilliant, I think it's a brilliant, he's another one that spent his career working on this show. But it was such a great moment as a new audience member, new to the whole thing. Oh, I get it. Oh, it's hilarious. And then you're laughing for the rest of the time. But I think that it's important to set the tone for what you're gonna give and then deliver it.
Okay. It's interesting that you say all of that. And it's one thing that I am interested to hear your thoughts on is, so you've Gaulier and like Lecoq, they're very famous sort of teachers, and there's a lot of clowns from there. And there's also, I listened to Barnaby King's podcast with Mark Giddink, and he said that there's a difference between American style of clowning and European style of clowning. Would you say that that is the case? And have you noticed in terms of the performers that you see from each and how they do a show?
You want me to answer that?
I mean, you want to.
Well, it's a great question.
Yeah,
and I think had you asked me that question 30 years ago, I would have said, wow, great difference. You know, the first time I went to Europe and saw the focus and the respect that the clowns were getting. Of course, I was seeing them in festivals, in high profile places. I wasn't seeing, you know, I immediately assumed, oh, there's no amateur clowns in Europe. They're all just highly trained professionals. You know, wow, everybody loves them. So it was not a legitimate view of the fact that it's actually very similar, I think, in America and Europe. We just, I think the focus of the high profile clowning and the fact that Fellini's Clowns, you know, talked about the death of the clown, and that's in the 70s. Holy cow. We haven't, you know, that's a pretty advanced thinking to think that we can have the death of the clown. And so Fellini really intrigued me in my early years, the clown, of how that could be and who these great clowns were. I think we have a problem in America in the sense that clowning took a commercial twist with Ronald McDonald and using the clown to sell things. I think this took us a little off track. Then literature establishing characters that are bad people took us on another track.
And then some actual bad people that were clowns didn't help. But also, I think, I'm sorry to interrupt you.
Yeah, I just want one last thing. There's a clown named Slivers Oakley, and he was a star clown with the Ringling Brothers Circus in the early 1900s. He's the one who made the one-man baseball pantomime famous. He played all the parts of a baseball game with one person in the Hippodrome in New York City, held the ring by himself for 7 minutes. Amazing feat. He was paid astronomical amount,
$1,000 a week.
And but then in 1917 thereabouts, the Ringling Brothers and Barnum and Bailey combined their shows. It became a huge spectacle, and all of a sudden they didn't want just star clowns. They wanted lots of clowns, 25 of them. And Slivers Oakley, who had the week before been paid a lot of money and was a star, was now one of 25 other clowns. His pay was put down to $25 a week, and he was basically a chorus boy. He had a lot of problems, Slivers, with romance and money and everything else, but he did kill himself. He gassed himself on the Upper West Side. And I always look at that moment when we wanted more as opposed to better as a real difference between clowning possibly in other parts of the world.
Bloody hell. I feel for you. Bloody hell. But what you said, Dave, is like it sounds like he was. Yeah, when I see some great comics like stand-up comedians, he sounds like he was troubled, uncomfortable, and you wouldn't see, you know, if you saw him on stage, you think he was super confident, super this and that, but off stage, I've seen a lot of comedians, some of the brilliant ones, they're very timid, they're very uncomfortable, and yeah, there's all sorts of demons. I've got a lot of demons that I need to struggle. I mean, I'm hiding it well here, but yes.
Well done, you.
Thank you. No, but it's but part of the demons is what the faults or the insecurities I think helps you as a performer. I think, and being able to express that. I had the chat with Mark Gidding. The difference between us and the regular Joe on the street is we expose our vulnerabilities on stage, whilst they get to hide them. Do you feel that as?
Yeah. Well, you mentioned a very important word, which we don't talk a lot about, and that's vulnerability. And clowning, so often, if I'm doing a critique of someone's style, my feeling is often that you have no vulnerability. How can you feel if you have no vulnerability? How can you feel that audience? How can you get in touch with them? How can you, I mean, clowns are naked in front of an audience. And if you don't feel that nakedness, I don't think you can do great clowning.
Do you guys, how do you guys get that sort of mindset where you're in the moment and you empty your head before you go on stage and like get in the moment? Do you put meditation videos? Do you, I don't know, smoke a cigar, get wasted on Jack Daniels? I don't know, Bacardi and Coke, mix them up. I don't know. What
Yeah. Tiffany and I mean, I want you to answer this, Tiffany, as well, but I just have to, I was thinking about the other day, and Tiffany and I have always,
Ah.
no matter what the environment, we go out in the audience before a show and meet and greet with the people in the audience. And I think, as I look back, that's a tactic I've used my whole career. And when Tiffany and I started working together some 25 years ago, I find that she likes to do that as well. And I think that is our meditation. That is our warm up. The fact that when you walk out and are 2 feet away from a family and you look them in the eyes, wow, they can really see you and they can really see that you're real. And you see they're a new audience that has no idea of what's to come. You know, and wow, what a beautiful opportunity this is. The other reason I like to go out beforehand is for our first, I don't want the audience to say, oh, that's who they are in the first number. I want them to go, oh, there's those two that we met in the pre-show. And it's a gimmick and I love it, but that is my warm-up, I believe.
It puts us further along in the relationship before we ever come on stage with a lot of the audience.
What if they don't like you and they want to beat you up before you go? I'm sorry, that's a stupid question.
I mean,
that's a good one. If we know that they're like that, it certainly allows us to adjust our performance.
Yeah, if we don't get a strong, friendly vibe, then we're gonna, okay, let's adjust. But
which is a big danger for clowns, because what most clowns do when they're not coming across too well is that they quit looking in the eyes of the audience and they start looking at the back wall like an actor. And then you know you're dead.
Now, talk about journeys and clowns and you guys being a duo. How did you guys become Slappy and Monday? Like, what was the journey there? Like, how did it happen? Did you meet in a bar? Did you meet in? How did you guys meet and become the duo that you are today?
Quite a journey. I mean, he was a circus clown since 1974, and yeah, I said it there. When I had never been to a circus really, and I saw him in a circus, and I had been studying with the Groundlings improvisational theater in Los Angeles, and was trying to get work as an actor just out of school from NYU, and I saw him be a clown, and I was not at all what I thought a clown was going to be. Like my preconceived idea, probably I was raised on Ronald McDonald and thought that was it. So I saw him connecting with the audience. I saw him playing music. I saw him doing eccentric dance. I saw him doing, improvisational comedy. And I fell in love with the comedy. I did not know about him that I had fallen in love with him for a while. He asked me to choreograph a number that he was doing where it was like a parody of, how the Chinese do the bike routine where they're riding the bike and the people stack on the bike and there's like 10 people balanced on a bike. So, but he wanted to do that with a stationary bike. So it's just dumb because the bike isn't moving. And so he asked me to choreograph it and I did. And I said, so when is the girl coming that's going to do this with you? And he said, well, I don't really have one. Are you busy Saturday? Would you like to do the circus with me? So that's how it started.
And did you know
but then we still didn't get started.
That was a Zoom lag, and I'm sorry, guys. Say what you were saying
there. We didn't get together then. We just were performing together took us another year to figure out we were interested in each other.
Yeah.
But that was your first. That was your first clowning.
Yeah.
That was your first clowning in a circus ring, and
I don't think I was very good.
well, we started off with a tango. We did a comedy tango number, and I think it was a great piece for you because you come from a dance background. I do not. I come from a klutz background, and so when we learned some good we went and took tango lessons and really worked on this act and had some big lifts in it and had some comedy in it. And I think that was really our first clown gag together, was a comedy tango dance.
Too, it came from the musical. Like there is a musical that's not coming to my mind right now, but there's a number in it called the Carnival Tango, and my parents had done that routine for years, and it starts out as a normal tango, and then all this ridiculous comedy and pratfalls ensue. And so we took it from that and made it our own. We did that for a pretty long time. So it allowed me to be a serious dancer who gets flustered and messed up with so the comedy comes out of me really trying to be a good dancer. And that was actually, now thinking back on it, was what a great transition into being a clown, to take something you already know and try to be really the best you can be at it. And then that's where the clown can come up and just make it not so in a funny way. Especially that one time when you accidentally tripped on the circus mat, and then I was spinning above your head and you chucked me across the...
Tiffany, I didn't trip on the circus mat.
Oh, you just threw me?
What happened was, you see, we were doing community circus. We carried a 6-piece band, 1,000 seats, sidewall, and we would give free shows to at-risk neighborhoods in Los Angeles. We were funded by the Cultural Affairs Department, the city of Los Angeles. A beautiful project, but we were in a neighborhood, and of course, we put our ring mat over a field, and I usually check the field pretty closely, but there was a hole. And so I stepped in an actual hole with Tiffany above my head, holding her up, and I stepped in a hole and she flew. And that was not part of the routine.
It was funny.
But it got a good laugh.
Yeah, good laugh. Yeah. Good laugh.
Painful.
Oh.
True story.
Did they know?
But that was the start of it. That was the start of our relationship, of us as clown partners. And it really happened pretty organically. And then about a year after that, we kept doing different routines and working on different things. And our lives evolved a bit. I think we were both in relationships when we first met. And slowly we kind of shed our relationships and found one with each other. And then we said, let's move to New York. And we did. And that's when life changed drastically. Right after we moved to New York, I got a phone call, and it was Kenneth Feld, the head of Feld Entertainment and the Ringling Brothers Circus, and asked me if I wanted to be the director of the Clown College. So we came to New York to produce clown theater, and immediately I was offered a job that took us in a totally different direction, which was one of the greatest clown jobs in the world, which is passing on this art form to young people. And we really, Tiffany and I led that school and really enjoyed it. I thank Kenneth Feld and his father, Irvin Feld, for creating the Clown College, which lasted for 30 years, over 1,300 students, and really promoted clowning in America like nothing else has ever done.
Will anything else promote it as at the level they did ever again, do you think?
Not them, but I think it's changed. So I would say that the most employed clowns in America right now are doing healthcare clowning. Like that's the biggest amount of places where you can see clowns actually, making money doing clowning in the healthcare setting. So for a lot of years, we've talked about, we taught with the New York Goofs, the company we formed for 20 years in New York. We would do a clown school every year. And there's a lot of teaching of clowning now, but there's not like Del Arte is the only place, and that's a physical theater school that does that in the US. There's no Lecoq, there's no Goliath, there's nothing like that. And I think we talk around in a lot of different circles about could America sustain something like that? What would that training program look like? Where would it be? And how could we make it happen? I mean, that's definitely always a conversation because there's a lot of people that are really wonderful clowns that are getting older, aging out, and you can read from a textbook and learn it. You can say, I'm doing different clowning. It's new now. It's different than it was, but there's still so much to be gained from some of those folks and those opinions. And I think, it would be great to figure out how we put something in place that preserves those ideas and helps them evolve into, into what is the future of clowning.
It's funny, isn't it? How different the practical knowledge of performing art is to the book. I mean, I've read books and comedy and I've done this and that, but I found that the best thing that I've learned is either through on stage or working with someone else rather than any books. I've learned more working with someone or on the podcast, chatting to someone or performing. I've not really learned that much from books at all.
Yeah. Well, we always will often say that a new routine, we can plan it out, but we don't learn that routine until we put it in front of an audience. I mean, we started doing a bubble act with bubbles, I don't know, probably just before COVID. And every time we're in front of an audience, the audience informs us what about this works for us in general. What about this gives it the arc that it needs? What is the button? What is the ending? I mean, we have a structure that we're going for, but if we can't put it in front of an audience, it's not going to continue to grow and we won't learn what's working the best about it. So it's never done, the learning, but the real time in front of an audience or watching someone else work, that's how you learn for sure.
And how much of performing is being a good psychologist?
Boy, that's a big one, huh? But we have to, I mean, you open the can of worms about people being, sometimes having inner demons and all of those things. I think all humans have that inner demons. I think we're the lucky ones who find outlets to be honest with ourselves and to find out kind of who we are. I mean, don't we always? Our whole life is a journey to try and figure out who we are. And as clowns, sometimes I feel like I'm the most honest with myself when I'm on stage being a clown. I have the right energy. I want to engage. When I'm not on stage, I'm kind of introverted and sometimes not as talkative at a party where people say, oh, he must be the life of the party. No, I'm not really. Kind of boring at a party. And sometimes that bothers me, but that's just the way I am. I like to be myself more in public, I think, than I do in private.
Yeah. As working like a comedy duo, how does it help, and what are the positives and what are the positives and the drawbacks? No, ignore the last question. But what are the challenges of working as a duo, and what are the positives of working as a duo?
That's what a great question.
I mean, it's been a learning curve.
Yeah,
every duo has to go through a journey, and I know I was not the best partner as we started.
No, but you've grown. I've beat you into submission through the years. Well, I mean, the thing is that you have to have space for the other person, and you have to learn the things that you can mess around with them and the things that you can't. And so I think, for a while, for many years, we made our living doing elementary school shows. We had a science show and a math show, and we did like 100 schools a year. And this is how we raised our children. And so we might do 5 or 10 shows in a week, and it's the same material. So when we were doing it that much, you can find, okay, this is this ping pong routine. And we know that this is the beginning, this is an important beat, and this is an important beat, and this is the ending. But what can happen in between those beats we would allow ourselves to stretch out and accept that maybe it wasn't going to land. Maybe I was going to throw something out there, take a risk, and it might not land. That's okay. We have that beat that we're coming back to. So I think that all of those shows helped us really develop sort of a spidey sense about the other one and what we can really get by with the other one and what we can't. And because we're there to, we're kind of three people. We're Slappy, and then we're Monday, and then we're who we are together. And so you have to, it's a balance. So I would say that when it's in balance, it's like we're like humming, it's in the zone. And then we can just ping pong off of each other and the audience, and everything goes more, and there's better laughs. That challenges,
the challenges are always, and for me, the challenge was after working solo for a number of years. I had other comedy partners, but I had been solo probably for 10 years prior to working with Tiffany. And I would, if someone stood up in the audience and did something, I saw it and I would deal with it. I was always totally spontaneous. I would stop my show at any moment to be spontaneous with the audience, go in the audience, deal with something. I improvised a lot with that, and then would come back to my beats and continue my show. So when I started working with a partner, I remember we were in China for a show, and I was insecure, so I kind of resorted back to my spontaneous tactics. And the first time I realized that when I'm going off on these tantrums and taking the focus with me into the audience to do something that just happened, that I'm stranding my partner on stage. And how can they be with me? How can we be in communication when I'm taking off like that? So that was a really big learning curve for me, to realize when I wanted to do that I needed to do it with my partner. I needed to, even if I went out in the audience, I needed to relay back my focus to my partner and keep that communication strong and alive so that I didn't strand my partner. So being aware of those kind of things, I think, allowed us to grow. We both adapted our performance styles to gel together. And now I think one of our strongest things that we have to offer is that people see us as a partnership, and they see us as two people really dealing with each other's personalities in the moment on stage. There's a lot of reality. When she blows a trick, I may make fun of it, or I'm, wow, that was incredible, and she just blew the trick. So, which gives, but that's just truth, and it really happened. And it's a nice moment when something doesn't work and I celebrate it and she doesn't. And so we see the contrast of how things affect.
Do that because he'll get upset. Interesting.
I'll let that sit there.
Sorry.
But that thing is, I think it's really, that is the key to not only a clown partnership, but also a relationship, is that you have to respect each other. You have to allow something to upset the other one, and then you have to find your way through it in service of what you're doing on stage. And it's not always perfect, but it's we try to communicate. And that is the other thing that people will say, is they see that happening. They'll see that communication with us, and that's one of the things that they think. People have said that watching us interact with each other is sometimes more fun than the material we're doing. So I don't know. Maybe that's a good thing.
Well, actually, it should be that way. Material. We can steal anybody's material. People steal our material. The material becomes the conduit, gives you the excuse to be there. But what the people are really watching is your character, the way you deal with them, and the way you deal with your partner. It's that in the moment, as you mentioned, that in the moment things that happen that make us real, authentic. They see an authentic relationship because it is. It's not a fake. There's nothing fake about what we're doing. It's all real, and it's the way we deal with each other. Of course, things are bigger, smaller, faster, slower. That's what we do in clowning, but they all come from truth. All of them.
That is very interesting, very intriguing what you said there. And like, yeah, truth, and it's one of the things that I find, and another thing that I find really interesting, you mentioned like people trying to steal your material or steal jokes. You don't seem to be, you guys seem quite blasé about it. You feel like it's not really that matters, it's the other things around it that makes it good. So it doesn't really bother you if someone goes, right, my name is Harry Potter, I'm going to, no, not Harry Potter, my name's Harry, I'm going to copy their material and try and perform it. You guys are like, good luck trying it, but you ain't us, so it's not going to work.
Yeah, I mean, it might work. It'll be different. It won't
Yeah.
be what we did.
Yeah. You know, I think some people in the clown world have trademark material that, you know, you look at the piece of material and you go, that's a certain clown. Jeff Gordon with his toilet paper. He did this toilet paper routine. It hadn't been done by anybody else, blowing a roll of toilet paper in the air and juggling it with an air blower. That was a trademark kind of material. And I would never, you know, if somebody develops such a visual, beautiful thing, it's theirs. And then now pretty much everybody in the world does that routine. But anytime I see it, I'm going to think of Jeff Gordon. So I really feel like in this classic comedy form, for me to say I'm doing anything original is a pretty atrocious statement. This art form is old. I know somebody's done this before. I don't think creativity is being original. I think creativity is doing something uniquely your way. And our relationship is unique to us. I'm a unique character. I'm authentic up there. My tricks, see, I was a juggler. I used juggling as my excuse to come on stage and learn to be a clown. Without the juggling, I couldn't have gotten to that point where I had the courage to stand in front of those people because I knew I had a trick. Okay, if they don't think this is funny, I'll do a trick for them and they'll like that. So it's, you know, for me, that was a safety net. So I think material in general is a lot of safety net to make you feel safe up there while you develop a relationship with the audience.
And that's one of the things that I have qualms with in stand-up comedy, with comedians who are just devoted just to the material rather than the performance side of it. And you mentioned in comedy, we hate joke thieves. It's a big sort of hoodoo, but there's a well-known thing of big comedians occasionally stealing material and people like actually going being hypocrites and actually getting people to steal material from open micers and it going on TV. And what are your thoughts on comedians who have such a big religious and tribal thing on like, you can't steal our jokes, it's a crime? Like, what's your thoughts on that?
Yeah, it's upsetting to us. We've seen, you know, sending demo tapes to shows, and then the next season you see one of your pieces of material in their show, but you're not doing it, somebody else is. And that happens, you know, those kind of things are very, very frustrating. I'm going to use a random example of something I learned. When I was trying to make a living in comedy, my side gig was I was a pitchman. I went to fairs and I sold crap, slicers, dicers, Ginsu knives, cookware, canopy makers. I had whatever pitchman opening was open at a fair, I would do it. But what I noticed was we'd get a new product and go to the fair circuit. And within 2 or 3 fairs, that new product, we had 5 other people who found a way to get that product and sell it. And all of a sudden, instead of being one pitchman selling it, there were 6. Well, that was frustrating, of course. But what I learned was, by the time they learn of my new product, I'm going to already have another one. Okay. This is the nature. the nature of the business is they're going to steal good products. So how can I succeed? Always have one product ready to go. So as soon as they steal it, I'll have another one out there. And now I still am new. And so I think there's something about assuming that comics are going to steal your material. Is that material what defines you? Or do you define you? So how much time are you going to worry on the heartache of worrying about that joke being stolen, as opposed to the time you spend developing that new joke that they don't have yet?
Oh, yeah. And yeah, it's just focus on going forward from it. It happens, isn't it? Because it's like when I don't know, someone breaks your heart, or someone like does something brutal to you. It's easy to wallow and say, "Oh, they did this to me, or they did that to me," but you're spending all that time thinking about the past and not thinking about how you can go forward. What advice would you give to like clowns and comedians out there if you're going to talk to your younger self and clowns and comedians across the world? What would be the single bit of performing advice you would give them, and how do people find out about you guys?
I would say study improvisation, find ways to be in front of an audience, try and be in front of an audience that is different kinds of people. So it's that clown theater audience, go do a family event somewhere, get into a variety show, just get in front of people, study improv, and watch other clowns.
I think also very important would be ask yourself, what would be a future in this world that sounds good to you? How much commitment do you want it? Are there things that you'd rather do than become a clown? Because you should probably do those. Are you really in need of financial security? Or can you live on a small amount of money as you pursue things that may not compensate you in the way you'd like to be? Finding opportunities usually aren't going to be at your doorstep. So are you willing to go where the work is once you start creating and having something to offer? So if you can kind of project as a little bit about where you want to go with your craft, I think you can prepare yourself better for what you might need. If you're going to go on the road, you might want to get a Volkswagen camper, and so that you can afford to not pay all of your salary in hotel rooms. These are the, how much are you really willing to go for this? Because that really determines if you want to say to yourself, in 5 years, I'd like to be with Cirque du Soleil. Okay, that's 5 years. So you want to go toward a circus. That means, and you know what style of circus that is, then you better start studying in terms with the kind of clowns they use at Cirque. If you wanted to go with a mud show, a small tented show in America, well, they're going to want big classic gags. You're going to have your own transportation. You're going to have to deal with a lot of mud, but the audiences are going to be real and fabulous.
Okay. And how do people find out about you guys?
Oh, yeah. I think the quickest way is to go to our website, which is www.laughterleague.org. So we're like the Justice League, only it's the Laughter League. And you can send us an email through there. You can check us out. You can also check our performance website out at slappyandmonday.com. And we love to hear from folks, and we are actually teaching in Atlanta in August. So there's a workshop there for people that might be interested in studying. We're going to be performing in the Berkshires this July with Circus Sarasota. So bringing a circus to the Berkshires. And
then this fall, we'll be back on tour with Omnium Circus. And we'll be all around the country next fall and next spring with this circus, which is an amazing circus with people of all sorts of abilities. You will not believe this show.
It's pretty great. And when we're not doing that, we are managing the Laughter League hospital programs. We have programs in 6 different cities in the US. And I would say we're always looking to cultivate potential talent for those programs because I believe it's going to keep growing, this work. And yeah, so you can, is that plenty of ways to get in touch?
Yes, that's it. That's tons of ways. So guys, I hope you've enjoyed it. I've enjoyed it. We've gone on a roller coaster. And I'll see you guys in the next episode where I'm going to be talking to a Comedy Central Bangladesh comic. So I hope you've enjoyed it.
Nice.